You're listening to Hysteria, the podcast for people who would be totally stumped playing a game of FMK starring Elon Musk, Alex Jones, and Andrew Tate.
Gross. Why would you even ask? Why would you even mention
that?
Disgusting.
There are 3 male names grouped together, and I don't like any of them, and that's where my brain goes first. So the reason that those 3 names were grouped together was because Musk, Alex Jones, Andrew Tate, and Vivek Ramaswamy.
And Matt Gaetz.
It was a summit of the most irritating and tedious men in the world. And they joined a Twitter live chat together where they discussed creepy things for men to discuss, like how women should be having more babies. And I think that between the lines, the implication was that white women should be having more babies.
Did you see the grosser part of their chat?
No, I tried to, look, my brain was like FMK.
Erin,
that's how I cope.
When you add these things to the outline, I go down a rabbit hole. And there was also a side controversy to their group chat, which was that when Vivek was talking, he was also peeing and didn't mute. And Elon was like, do you feel better now?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I read that, so you'd have to know it too, and so does everybody else.
You know what, and that's not even the most interesting peeing on a mic moment that's happened in the last 10 years. The jinx.
What the hell are you doing? Kill them all. Of course.
The jinx is always going to be like Vivek. You can't do anything interesting, original. Someone already did it. And they did it better.
He's a copycat.
You're never going to be Robert Durst. You're going to have to get to murdering if you want to ever get to a Robert Durst level of notoriety or of being interesting, of being an interesting person.
Not an interesting person.
Yeah, we did have a pretty lively debate in the Hysteria group chat on the FMK results of those 3 men, and not going to share that. Don't want to get anybody in trouble, but I got to say, I wish I never would have gone there mentally. Not great. Another thing that I saw this week that kind of caught my eye was if you thought that it seemed like U.S. women's national team soccer players were receiving a lot of abuse online, it was not your imagination. It turns out that the U.S. women's national team was extremely targeted by online abuse, which feeds into my giant conspiracy theory that there's a big misogyny troll farm behind a lot of campaigns against women who speak up.
Well, and
prove
Erin,
me wrong.
No one. This lady is not going to try and prove you wrong. But going back to the group chat we just mentioned, do you know that of the over 7,000 posts that were flagged, 6,100 were sent from accounts on X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah. There are so many problems with how easy to manipulate Twitter is. If you think that Twitter, aka X, is any reflection of reality, it is so easy to manipulate. And we've seen it done in for the forces of misogyny so many times. You know, we've seen it done in sort of benign ways, but benign to annoying ways, when everyone was pretending to clamor for, or when people thought that people were clamoring for the Zack Snyder cut of the superhero movie, and it turns out it looks like there was some trolls or like some inflated online activity, making it seem like a lot more people actually cared about a Zack Snyder cut than actually did. We saw that during the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial.
Yep.
Real bad. And a lot of people who should have known better acted like total fucking assholes about that because they were manipulated into believing that what was happening on Twitter was a reflection of what was actually happening among the human population. We've seen it, when Trump was running for office the first time. We see it when people speak out against Ron DeSantis online or say something that runs afoul of his supporters. We see like a suspicious amount of blowback. And, the U.S. women's national soccer team has been pretty unabashedly pro-human rights. Pro-LGBTQ rights.
Yep.
Politically outspoken, politically progressive. And so it totally stands to reason that the same machine that can create a just fire hose of hate aimed at Amber Heard over one trial, can probably do the same to a team full of women who are speaking up. So I don't know. Don't believe things that you see online. Twitter's not real.
It's not real.
Twitter is not real, but the people who manipulate Twitter can affect reality by making people believe that it's real. So,
That's a very good point.
Don't let the tail wag the dog, guys. Anyway, I wish I was good at making the disco siren sound. You know that? Bow, 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 bow. Time to talk about abortion.
Here we are. It's what we do.
Every week. But you know what? I wish we didn't have to talk about it every week. We would not have to talk about it every week if Republicans could shut the fuck up about it.
Yeah, get out of my vulva.
But they can't. They can't.
It's really funny I said that.
Yeah. That's quite crude. Oh my goodness. Someone get me some smelling salts for that. We've got to talk about abortion this week because people who are opposed to bodily autonomy cannot leave it alone.
Nope.
Cannot leave women alone. Cannot leave uteruses alone. This past couple of weeks, we have all followed with horror the story of Kate Cox, a Texas woman who was carrying a non-viable pregnancy that was threatening her health and lives in a state with an abortion ban. And the only exceptions to that ban are to preserve the life of the mother at her point in pregnancy. She's about 20 weeks pregnant. Kate Cox petitioned a court to get permission to have an abortion. She petitioned the court to shield her doctor from prosecution, which would have been possible under Texas state law. And she also petitioned to shield her husband from prosecution. Yep. Kate Cox already has 2 children. The pregnancy that she's carrying right now is positive for trisomy 18, which is not compatible with life. And it is threatening her health currently and threatening her future fertility. So after a court in Texas granted an exception to the law and said that Kate Cox could have an abortion, human shit stain and AG of Texas, Ken Paxton, decided to step in and appeal the case to the Texas Supreme Court, which is full of many human shit stains, all of whom are Republican. And the Texas Supreme Court agreed with Ken Paxton and said that Kate Cox did not actually have a right to abortion under the Texas law, and that the exception granted by the judge that had heard her case did not count. So Kate Cox has now traveled elsewhere to have an abortion that is of a wanted pregnancy, that is of a baby that is could not possibly live, is of a pregnancy that threatens her future fertility and ability to bear children that have a chance to survive. It's putting her body at risk. It is costing her family a lot of money. Her children, she has 2 children, like I mentioned. She's going to have find somebody to look after her children while she does this. This is a case that has made a lot of people that you wouldn't necessarily expect to be getting on a microphone and losing their marbles about how inhumane this is, and getting on microphones talking about how inhumane this is. Mika Brzezinski.
Yes.
Mika Brzezinski.
She burned it down.
All but called Ken Paxton a human shit stain on Morning Joe, which is not necessarily a place that I go for the most cutting edge progressive takes. But Mika Brzezinski is pretty much in line with feminists here, with choice advocates, with reproductive justice advocates here. I also saw Hoda talking about this.
I saw Hoda talk about it too. Erin, here's the thing. If you want to have a reasonable argument about abortion, this was the case for Republicans to demonstrate, for the courts in Texas to demonstrate that they were humane.
And that exceptions were exceptions.
Yes, this is before they decided. It was actually, people were looking to this to say, okay, this is where we will start getting some guidance. Doctors will start getting some guidance on what an exception is. And no, they decided that her life doesn't matter. Nothing, like it is the most cruel and inhumane execution of a law that there probably has been.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And I think that people are seeing this all around the country. And understanding now, so it's one of those things that after Dobbs was overturned, a lot of people were saying, we told you this would happen. This is going to affect reproductive health care across the entire country. Even if you don't think you would ever have an abortion, even if you're so quote unquote pro-life that you would never terminate a pregnancy for medical reasons, this is going to affect you. And that those voices were included in the conversation post Dobbs, but they weren't front and center. And now, lo and behold, what are we seeing?
Lo and behold.
Every single person in Texas who ever would need gynecological care for any reason is now seeing these laws, these bans are causing all of us to suffer. They're impacting all of us. And even if you live in a blue state, like I'm in California, you're in New York, abortion is pretty protected. If you're in a blue state and you need an abortion, under circumstances like Kate Cox, you're probably going to have to wait in line behind a bunch of people who are coming in from other states because they can't get a medical termination in the state where they live.
And Governor Kathy Hochul here in New York made a really good point when talking about this case. She said, be clear, even in a blue state, you are not totally safe. Like, you still can't rest on your laurels. She talked about, which I didn't even know about, some MAGA nut job who wanted to be health commissioner here in New York, who could have placed incredible restrictions. They have power over women's access to healthcare. And Erin, here's the other thing. This case is the first instance of an adult pregnant woman asking a court for permission to terminate her pregnancy under an abortion ban since Roe was decided in 1973. 50 fucking years.
That's disgusting.
It's disgusting.
I mean, and another thing is, like, this isn't the only case. This is the case that is taking up the most oxygen in the room, but not if you watch Fox News. They're barely talking about it on Fox News, which is how you know that they know it's bad. It makes them look bad. I'm not sure what Ken Paxton is doing or why he's doing it. He's not even getting airtime on his beloved conservative media outlets because they're all like, this is really bad.
They're like, hey, we don't know if you've noticed, but this is actually not where we're going.
Oh, I don't want to lead with this one. I think it's in Ohio, a woman who's
this is terrible.
A woman miscarried and is being charged with abuse of a corpse because she attempted to flush the fetal remains down a toilet, which I'm not sure.
Which is where she miscarried.
Which is where she miscarried. It was a 22-week-old fetus, and it is like, this is happening everywhere, and every single person, especially people who live in red states, are going to be impacted by this. And here's another way that you're being impacted. OBGYNs don't want anything to do with your state anymore. They don't want to train there. If they're there and they can leave, they're leaving. People in Idaho are having to drive hours to get prenatal care because maternity wards are closing. OBGYNs are leaving. People don't want to practice medicine. They don't want to practice their specialty in a state that outlaws an important component of their specialty.
Right.
Abortion care and the procedures, like an elective abortion, the procedure that, of an elective abortion is identical to the procedure of you miscarried, you're carrying a non-viable fetus, and you want to move on with your fertility and your life. There's a woman in Kentucky right now who is suing. She's, I believe, 8 weeks pregnant, and they discovered during a routine exam, this is a very common thing that happens. They discovered that her embryo has no heart, has no cardiac activity.
Right.
It is not going to live. It's not going to live. The standard way that's treated, anybody who has ever had a miscarriage would know this, or talked to somebody who's had a miscarriage. The standard way that's treated is with an abortion procedure. Now, you can wait and see if your body gets rid of it on its own. But the safer way and the quicker way to move on is to have a DNC or a DNE or to take an abortion pill. That's the quicker way to use it. There's literally no difference in procedure between that procedure and if you had chosen to end a viable pregnancy. It is the same procedure. So doctors don't want to go to places where they can't learn how to do a thing that they are going to have to do.
Without question. Like, they have no choice. This is something they need to learn how to do to actually engage in their profession.
Yeah.
People
and
are
this
like,
woman,
no.
And this woman in Kentucky is arguing that a ban on abortion that prevents her from having a, again, not alive, not ever going to be alive, never, ever going to be alive. Like, in order, she is arguing that it is a violation of the state constitution for her to not be able to have the contents of her womb taken out with the assistance of a medical professional. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with that. We also have some movement on the Supreme Court and mifepristone, the abortion drug that a single judge, again in Texas, decided should not be accessible.
That fucking guy.
I fucking hate him so much. I hate flames from the side of my face, as they say in the movie.
A judge and former anti-abortion activist. We cannot forget.
Yes, former anti-abortion activist and full-time creep. Total creep. So right now, the state of the case is a little bit confusing. As everybody probably recalls, right after Kaczmarek said that mifepristone's FDA approval should be revoked and it should no longer be available. There was a bunch of like legal back and forth. There was action taken, I believe, in the state of Washington action taken somewhere else. And so there's a couple appeals working their way up. On Wednesday, the Supreme Court announced that it will review the Fifth Circuit Court's decision, which would have limited the point in pregnancy at which mifepristone is allowed to be taken. But it decided that it would not review a request by the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine. And that request asked that the justices consider revoking the underlying approval of mifepristone. So that's a lot of words to say. For now, mifepristone is as available as it was yesterday. The Supreme Court said you can still get it. You can still get it. It's still okay. We are going to review the Fifth Circuit case, adding more restrictions. But for now, there are no more restrictions. And we are not going to consider completely revoking the FDA approval of the drug. Mixed bag.
Mixed bag.
Mixed bag.
Not as bad as it could be.
Yes. And this is according to Chris Geidner, who writes a Substack called Law Dork, which I subscribe to and I really enjoy. His analysis said that the 3 orders that the Supreme Court released today represent a best case scenario for abortion rights supporters. Basically, if the court hadn't agreed to take up the appeal from the Fifth Circuit, then eased access to mifepristone would have been over.
Right.
And if they had agreed to take up the Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine, a made-up organization, by the way, if they had agreed to take up that request, the case would have put all of approval of mifepristone into question. So, good news. It's good.
It's good news.
It's good.
It's good. It's good.
It's
good-ish.
It's
good. It's good enough.
It's the best that we could have gotten today. But we still have some future good or bad news. There's an inflection point there. So that's the update there. I don't know. I'm exhausted, Alyssa. I'm tired of talking. It's
exhausting. Because you know what? The reason we have to keep talking about this is because literally every week there is more happening. And people have real lives to lead. You know, people are busy. They're going to work. It's really hard to keep up with all of this jiggery, pokery, fuckery that the Republicans are trying to. They've learned no lessons, Erin. Every election since Roe was overturned, America is telling them, not Democrats, America is telling them, you might want to slow your roll. We're not really with you. Like 2/3 of Americans are like, we should have abortion. And they just can't. I mean, Erin, even in Wyoming this week, where abortion currently is only available up to the point of quote unquote viability.
Right. But the good news is nobody lives in Wyoming. So
which is good because there's only one abortion clinic in all of Wyoming.
Okay. Well, I guess more per capita abortion clinics than there are in most states, since there's 12 people in Wyoming and one abortion clinic.
Yeah, there you go.
But no, Wyoming is huge. There are a lot of people in Wyoming. I think like 500,000 people, which is like 1/20th the size of Southern California. And they get 2 senators. But regardless, there's
a fight for another day.
Look, I'm sorry. I got to dunk on Wyoming. Western Wyoming, you're lovely. I've met some wonderful people from Wyoming. You need to be absorbed into a different state that can run itself better and not as like a tiny little like Bahamas where billionaires can set up their little tax shelter lodges and have creepy meetings and make abortion illegal and in ways that threaten the accessibility of the procedure to everybody in the United States.
Yes, though some good news out of Michigan. Big Gretch not letting up. Has her small majority, and she is doing the absolute most with it.
Yeah, on Monday, Gretchen Whitmer signed a piece of a legislative package called the Reproductive Health Act. And the Reproductive Health Act will safeguard abortion rights in Michigan. And it repeals a law that banned insurance coverage for abortion without the purchase of a separate rider. Amazing. And it's ridiculous that existed in the first place.
Can you believe, Erin, I was like, when I read that, I'm like, wait a minute. So if you're a woman, do you just need to get the rider? Like what? Yeah. Or do you, because I'm assuming you can't get it once you're pregnant. Like you can't.
Yeah.
You have to,
no, it's like,
then it's a pre-existing condition.
It's like short-term disability insurance. If your company has like really crappy maternity leave and you have to use short-term disability in order to. Yeah. Anyway, it's like that. Yeah. You can't, I don't think you can buy abortion care as a rider while you're pregnant because it probably wouldn't kick in. Yeah. It's really stupid. Why don't men have to purchase riders for any of the things that they get that only happen to them? Like
testicular cancer,
prostate cancer.
Any of them.
There are other, like murder. Men are more likely to get murdered. And do murder.
And do murder.
And do murder than women. I don't want to pay for murder stuff. I'm glad that Gretchen Whitmer is on top of this. And I'm glad that she's bringing to light the fact that abortion coverage on insurance should be standard. It's ridiculous that women should have to pay more just to be women. We're already contributing quite a bit to society, you know?
Yeah. Also, we're already paying taxes on tampons, so calm down. Stop.
Yeah. And you know,
and our dry cleaning's more expensive. Everything's more expensive.
It's so silly. Great to hear that. There's also some really interesting stuff happening in the Southwest, in Arizona and New Mexico, two bordering states. Arizona had an abortion ban that existed, that pre-existed its statehood.
Right.
And that ban was overturned by the Roe v. Wade decision in 1973. But lawmakers in Arizona also passed a separate ban on abortion after 15 weeks of pregnancy. And there's confusion over which law applies at this point. The Arizona Supreme Court is scheduled to hear arguments this week on whether the pre-statehood ban from 1864, which would prohibit all abortions at any state of pregnancy, applies now, or if the 15-week ban applies. Now, meanwhile, Arizona is one of those states where citizens can add referenda to the ballot and change the state constitution and basically pass laws by leapfrogging the legislature. It's not as easy in Arizona as it is in Ohio. Right. But it is possible, and advocates in Arizona say that they're pushing to get a ballot measure before voters next year that would undo both of the bans. So, exciting times in Arizona.
Exciting times.
We've also got in New Mexico. New Mexico is one of only 7 states that allow abortions to be obtained at all stages of pregnancy, and it's a place that especially women, you know, it's a haven state. Women in Texas, it's the closest place that women from Texas can obtain reproductive health care in many cases. But there are some local conservative towns that are attempting to override state law by enacting their own bans, which you can't do that. That's not how.
Just stop yourself.
You can't do that. The state's Democratic Attorney General is challenging the bans, saying they violate the state constitution, which prohibits discrimination based on sex or pregnancy status. So we're going to
into New Mexico.
I'm into New Mexico. Everybody who listens to this show knows. You always have been. I love New Mexico, and I hope that the right minds prevail here. Okay. Oh, the Grannies are getting revenge. Alyssa, take it away.
So into what our seniors are doing for us. Specifically, we're going to kick it off. Erin, we talked to Catholics for Choice last week, and this week we're going to talk about some Catholic nuns who got together and bought shares of Smith & Wesson, a gun-making company. I'm sure you've all heard of it. Mm-hmm. So they could sue the company to stop making AR-15s. AR-15s have been the weapon of choice of some of the worst mass shootings in America: Uvalde, Parkland, Buffalo, the Las Vegas Music Festival, Pulse nightclub shooting, and Sandy Hook Elementary School, which happened, Erin, by the way, 11 years ago this week. AR-15s are considered the civilian version of military weapons. Now, Erin, I know because you grew up in Wisconsin that you will have the same opinion I do on this. A lot of gun owners and gun manufacturers are like, oh, but it's for hunting. Erin, what does an AR-15 do to something you hunt?
It makes it completely inedible. It just like blows
it into a million pieces.
There's no reason that any citizen should have that gun. I have a question though. Look, we know the Catholic Church has a lot of money. I've been to the Vatican before. That place is basically covered in priceless artifacts and gold. We did have a pope for a while who wore Prada loafers. They've got a lot of money. Where did the nuns get the money? The nuns don't tend to be the bling bling. The priests are a little bit more the fashion queens.
Across this country, nuns are making and selling cheesecakes. They're growing weed. Wherever they got the money, I am absolutely here for it. They filed the lawsuit earlier this week in Nevada District Court, and it alleges that Smith & Wesson has repeatedly ignored red flags and failed to respond appropriately to mass shootings in the United States, to which I say, agree.
Yeah, I enjoy a little bit of an investor revolt, a little hostile takeover by some cute nuns.
It's
more of like a hostile pain in the ass, because I don't think it's going to be a takeover, but it's like, that's...
Go ahead, fight the nuns, Smith & Wesson.
Yeah, well, I mean, they fight children. They fight,
They fight everybody.
They'll fight anybody.
They're for death.
Okay, so how else are grannies and grandparents getting revenge?
Erin, sometimes people retire and they're like, what am I going to do with myself now that I'm retired? Well, a group called Grandparents for Truth was founded to combat Moms for Liberty, and they're working to stop the ridiculous book bans and hateful activity coming out of this ridiculous conservative group. Grandparents for Truth, again, hearkening back to last week, a project of progressive advocacy organization People for the American Way, which was founded by television producer Norman Lear, who died last week at the age of 101. He established People for the American Way in 1981 to counter the moral majority agenda of the religious right. These grandparents are out there looking out for their grandkids and for the future. They are getting rallies together. They are writing letters. They are doing the most grassrootsy, campaigny things that anybody could be doing to try and stop this absolute fuckery by people who aren't even moms and have nothing to do with liberty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's big Jane Fonda energy. Big Norman Lear energy.
Yes.
Love to see it.